Welcome back. The police-involved deaths of Eric Garner and Michael Brown have pushed the issues of community policing and police tactics back into the national spotlight. The facts in both cases are far from final, but we know that Brown was killed after the police officer realized he was a suspect in a convenience store robbery, and Garner was killed while police were attempting to arrest him for allegedly selling loose cigarettes. Today, former NYPD Commissioner Ray Kelly gave our Dominic Carter an exclusive take on the police responses in both cases. Dominic?
Andrew, we did go one-on-one with the former top cop of New York City regarding the Missouri unrest just a few days ago that has been seen around the world. And of course, the peaceful weekend march in Staten Island. Kelly, who is a strong supporter of the police, says Missouri authorities made numerous mistakes. For example, Kelly says it was a huge mistake to release the videotape. He says police did it, I'm quoting him, to dirty up Michael Brown. Commissioner Ray Kelly, the longest serving police commissioner of New York City, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you once again, Dominic.
We've been through many a storm together.
True, we have.
Okay, Commissioner, let's begin this way. The funeral today for Michael Brown, as you well know, in Missouri, and the mood in Ferguson, at least as we speak as of now, it has improved, and I guess we have to say thank God for that. But what do you make of how law enforcement authorities handled that situation?
Well, I think you have to put it in context. This is an event of sort of world proportions, if you will. I mean, it's been seen all over the world, certainly through Europe. It's happened in a small town. And understandably, in some ways, they simply were not prepared for it. There are many things that I know if they could, they'd do over. And the issues that I see are, number one, lack of transparency. What you do is get information out as quickly as possible as to the details that you know when an event such as this happens. As you know, we've had many shootings in a population base of 8.4 million people. In the context of the police have, you're going to have that experience over time. So when that happens, you have to get out the details as best you can. Who, what, where, when, why, the number of bullets fired, the wounds on the person who was hit, and then you must use attorneys to counsel you as to what else you should say. So what happened here is they delayed putting out any information at all, and we can talk more about that. You also need one person in charge. It was not clear, and quite frankly, still to this day, it's not clear to me as to who is in charge of the tactical operations. Captain Johnson, he did an outstanding job, certainly communicating and meeting with the community, but he's labeled as a coordinator. He works for people in the State Highway Patrol. There is a county police chief who's in charge of the county law enforcement officers. Ferguson has its own police chief. There are 60 police departments, 60 police departments in St. Louis County. So when something happens in one of these towns, they have mutual aid. They come from other towns. That's very difficult to control and coordinate. So that's why I say you need one person who clearly is in charge. You also need one spokesperson saying, singing from the same sheet of music, as they say. That one person is putting out that information. You heard Captain Johnson say that he didn't know anything about the film being put out. So you got to get together and use one voice. And the other thing I mentioned before is you need lawyers. You need to vet what's being said by attorneys working for the city or the state or the county.
Before it's said.
Before it's said. And also, I would submit that you need lawyers on the street to advise the police on the street as to how to conduct themselves, whether or not actions being taken by demonstrators are lawful or constitutional. You need that interaction ongoing. It's just some of the things that I've seen. But again, they were just surprised by it. Small town, very confusing jurisdictional makeup, and simply were not prepared for this world-class event.
Did law enforcement make the problem worse?
Well, as I say, I think there's lots of things they would like to have done over if they could. I have never seen police officers in a riot control mode, if you will, pointing weapons at people. I've never seen that before. Maybe it's been done, but it's not taught. That's not the type of thing that's taught. Now, to put the best face on it, perhaps there were rubber bullets in those weapons. I know they did use rubber bullets. I haven't seen rubber bullets used anywhere else. I mean, in Northern Ireland, they use them. So, you know, they didn't help themselves early on. No question about that.
What would a Commissioner Kelly have done if he, looking at video feeds or being out at the scene, saw officers pointing those rifles at people?
Oh, as far as pointing rifles, you have to change that right away. But you normally wouldn't have officers in a disorder control mode with rifles. They wouldn't carry them. You know, you're not there to use a heavy weapon against a crowd. At the very most, in these situations, you'd have police officers with nightsticks moving forward, but you wouldn't have rifles or heavy weapons utilized at all.
Big mistake.
Well, as I said, you know, it's something that I think, in hindsight, I'm sure they're saying shouldn't have happened. But going back to my other point, you have multiple jurisdictions that are responding. They are responding to different supervisors, and you know, again, trying to control that is no easy task. That's one of the benefits you have in big cities, certainly here in New York. You're able to mass police officers. They're all working for the same commander. They have the same training. They have the same uniform. They have the same equipment. That's not what you saw on the streets of Ferguson, certainly early on.
Commissioner Kelly, let's talk about today's funeral for a moment for Mr. Brown, in which someone you have known a very long time, you've known very well, Reverend Al Sharpton, doing the eulogy. He said that as of today, this young man should have been starting his second week of college. And he went on to note that Mr. Brown's body was left on the street for hours. Your reaction to that?
Well, very unfortunate event. We know that. I think you have to use common sense when an event happens and a body is on the ground. You remove that body as quickly as possible. It becomes a focal point for more disorder. In this case, it didn't, but it certainly could have. So, in my judgment, you move that body as quickly as possible. If a body is behind a building and you want to photograph the building and photograph the body and do all of the forensic things that are necessary, that's one situation. It's out of public view. It's not blocking traffic. When a body's in the middle of the street, just in real practical purposes, you move that body as quickly as possible. You take that body to the hospital. You don't necessarily even wait for someone to come in and make a pronouncement. So that's another thing that I'm sure, in retrospect, they would have changed if they could.
Commissioner Kelly, you mentioned transparency, and that's a word we've heard a lot as it relates to Missouri. And it's so nice to talk to you tonight because you're the top cop and you can explain all of this to us. So let's talk about this for a second. Was it a mistake to release that videotape?
Well, it gets back to what I said before about consulting attorneys, because it looks to me like no competent legal authority was consulted on that matter. There was mention that it was a Freedom of Information request, but Freedom of Information requests can languish for a long time. This one was responded to very quickly, if in fact that's why they put it out. But the defendant, excuse me, I'm talking about arrest situation, but Michael Brown's conduct before should be separated from the events that happened on the street with the confrontation. And then, at the same time, the chief of the department says he the shooting officer did know about the events that happened before. So, it was very confusing as to what the purpose of releasing it was. But no, I wouldn't have released it. It may have come out in another way, but to officially put it out at the same time that you're identifying the officer, it looked very bad, and it should have been handled a different way.
So Commissioner Ray Kelly of the NYPD, you would not have released that video?
That video may have gotten out in other manner, in another way. Don't forget, the video is owned by the person in the store. So if there was any inkling that the video was there, that person may have sold it. They may have sold it or put it out on his own.
Commissioner Kelly, I'd like for you tonight to respond to a tweet that I saw over the weekend. As you well know, we're in the middle of a race for governor. Governor Andrew Cuomo in a Democratic primary against candidate Teachout. On the Republican side, you have Rob Astorino. Mr. Astorino sent out this tweet, and I want to read it to you here, in which he says that he and Sheriff Moss, the lieutenant governor candidate on his ticket, stand firmly behind the NYPD in the face of a growing war on cops designed by Reverend Sharpton and a few spineless politicians. Your reaction?
Well, if I wanted to get involved in a political campaign, I would have run myself. So I'm going to stay out of this.
Oh, well, how close did you come to actually running yourself?
We thought about it.
You did think about running for mayor. Mm-hmm. You had sky-high poll numbers. Did you believe you could win?
Well, there are a lot of factors involved. I think overall, I've been in the department a long time. I didn't necessarily want to get my family involved in a campaign. Campaigns have become very, very nasty these days, and will only continue to move in that direction. And I determined that it just simply wasn't the right thing for myself and my family at this stage of my life.
How close, Commissioner, between you and I, did you come? Did you come to running? How close?
I thought seriously about it.
This leads to our conversation for you at home. Head to Facebook and Twitter. Sound off Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and Policing in America. We want your take. Up next, more from Ray Kelly and his exclusive sit-down with Dominic Carter. Why Kelly says he thought about running for city office, and we'll tell you which one right after this.